I was attached to 2nd Platoon, 1st Platoon, and eventually became the company radio man. I had a 10-second life expectancy. You're carrying a radio and you have an antenna on it, and you're responsible to call in the flights of fixed wing to drop 500-pound bombs and napalm on them, to call artillery on them, to call mortars on them. And you're also responsible to call in the resupply choppers for ammunition, plus get the dead and wounded out. And if they can kill you, then you're at a disadvantage.
Hi, this is Bruce Lindsay working with Elizabeth Gallo on our project to document the stories of veterans. Today we are with Vietnam veteran Paul Shover. Paul was a United States Marine and he served 14 months in Vietnam.
My name is Paul Shover, United States Marine Corps Vietnam vet, 2-time Purple Heart recipient. I spent 14 months in Vietnam from April of 67 to July of 68. I achieved the rank of sergeant and fulfilled my lifetime goal of being a United States Marine.
When did that goal start?
When I was 10 years old, I saw my cousin Chuck come home on leave from Cuba in his dress blues. And from that day on, I decided I was going to be a United States Marine. And in 1962, when I entered high school, they asked me what my career goals were once I graduated. And I said, to be a United States Marine. And that was put in the yearbook. And I fulfilled my goal.
So when you went in 1966, the Vietnam War was already going on. You went in knowing you were going to Vietnam, right?
And when I told my father the Marine Corps recruiter was coming out to see him, he said, "For what?" And my father was in the island hopping campaigns. He was Army engineer. And he said, "Why did you enlist in the Marine Corps?" I said, "Because I want to be a Marine." He said, "Do you know you're going to wind up in Vietnam?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Then why didn't you go in the Army?" I said, "I was still going to wind up in Vietnam. I wanted the best training that I could possibly get, which is only in the Marine Corps, to ensure me that I was going to come home alive." He said, "You know, it's not too late to change your mind. I said, yeah, Dad, I already took my oath.
So you headed to boot camp. I assume you went to Parris Island.
Paris Island, Paradise Island. That was a joke.
If you know, you know.
Pardon me?
If you know, you know.
Oh, yeah. If you'd never been there, you wouldn't understand.
After boot camp, what unit did you get sent to?
I went out to Camp Pendleton, California for jungle warfare training and advanced infantry and advanced first aid training. And then I got assigned to 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, Charlie Company, Suicide Charlie. That was the nickname given to that company in Korea. And in Vietnam, we still flew the flag of Suicide Charlie, the skull and the crossbones.
What was your MOS?
2531, which is I was a 2531 field radio operator, forward observer. I had to call in the medevacs to get the dead and the wounded out. I had to call in artillery, mortars, flights of fixed wing to repel the enemy and to give us the fire superiority we needed to finish the mission.
So you must have been near the company commander most of the time.
Pardon me?
Were you near the company commander or one of the platoon commanders most of the time in the field?
Being communication, you're attached to the company. So I was in Vietnam, I was attached to 2nd Platoon, 1st Platoon, and eventually became the company radio man. I had a 10-second life expectancy.
I know why that is, but can you explain it?
You're carrying a radio and you have an antenna on it, and you're responsible to call in the flights of fixed wing to drop 500-pound bombs and napalm on them, to call artillery on them, to call mortars on them. And you're also responsible to call in the resupply choppers for ammunition, plus get the dead and wounded out. And if they can kill you, then you're at a disadvantage. The other two people that had a 10 seconds life expectancy were the machine gunner and the corpsman. I saw one machine gunner sacrifice his life to save ours, and he got the Medal of Honor posthumously. I saw a corpsman sacrifice his life to save lives of Marines, and he died there and got the Medal of Honor posthumously.
The Marines love corpsmen, don't they?
Anytime I see a corpsman, I say the hoorah devil dog, because as far as I'm concerned, a combat corpsman, as far as I'm concerned, he's as close as you could possibly get to being a Marine. The only thing he didn't do was go through Marine Corps boot camp. He didn't earn the title United States Marine, but I still consider him just a hair below.
We haven't specifically talked about the engagements you were in, and I'm not sure if you want to. It's totally up to you. If you want to describe some of the things that you did.
I want to start off by saying any man who has ever been to war or been to combat will live with it for the rest of his life. Any man who has taken another man's life will live with that for the rest of his life. I was involved in 12 major operations in Vietnam. I have 4 campaign stars on my campaign ribbon, which would, the only people that are, only Marines that can wear that are the ones that were there for the entire Tet Offensive. I was in combat where there was 250 of us went in, and after I called in medevacs for the dead and the wounded, and we disengaged, there might have been 75 of us left. People ask me, when were you in Vietnam? I say last night in my nightmares. Then I tell them 1967, 1968. But the last night in my nightmares, factual.
You mentioned one time about the battleship New Jersey.
Pardon me?
You mentioned about the battleship New Jersey one time.
Yeah, we were on a major operation, and we were up in the high elevations of the jungle and mountains, and we met enemy contact. And if anybody's ever seen the movie We Were Soldiers, that's what we were involved in. They had an entire city dug under in a mountain. And as fast as we would kill them, they just kept coming and coming and coming. And it took us 8 days to get out of there. And it was a total bloodbath, not only for us, but for them. But we left there victorious. And those are the things that just, you can't get them out of your mind.
So you were in country for 14 months, you said?
Pardon me?
How long were you in country?
14 months. The only time I got a break was both times I got wounded, went back to the hospital.
How long were you off the line then?
First time for 6 weeks. Last time for 2 days. Then they send you right back out. I had buddies of mine over there that said to me, because there was a rule, if you got 3 Purple Hearts, you go home. Everybody said, don't you want to get that third one? I said, no. With my luck, it'll be right here. I said, I'll finish out my tour and hopefully go home in one piece.
So what was it like when you did come home? What were your experiences then?
When I got home, we landed at Los Angeles Airport and got taken to Treasure Island, which is a Navy base on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge, on the other side of San Francisco. We got through our medical shots, debriefing, our medical exams, and then got our orders and got taken from there by bus to San Francisco Airport. When we got to San Francisco Airport, we had a double police escort to get us through the airport. We were called killers, murderers, rapists, baby killers. They were throwing stuff at us, spitting at us. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell did I come home to? I just shed my blood for this country, and this is what. And when I left Vietnam, I had a lot of good friends, Marines, that I felt like I was deserting. I felt like I was leaving them behind. I felt like I made it 14 months. Maybe I should stay and help them get out of here with me. And I thought about that the whole way home. And when I got home, I was like, holy hell, I want to go back. And I got married and had a child. And through it all, till Vietnam ended, I kept saying to myself, go back. Go back. You're not finished. You're not done with what you wanted to accomplish.
How long from the time you came back to Vietnam before you got out of the Marine Corps?
When I got back, first I was at Camp Lejeune and got exposed to all the contaminants and the dirty water and the toxic chemicals, which I got exposed to Agent Orange 6 times in Vietnam, 7 times. And I just had my doctor's appointment today because I had lung cancer due to Agent Orange. And I had my surgery, and I'm now 4 years cancer-free. But after Camp Lejeune, I got requested a transfer and got Naval Weapons Station, Yorktown, Virginia, which at that time was a top secret nuclear base. And I was in the Marine Guard Detachment, which was about 600 Marines. And I was first corporal of the Guard, then became sergeant of the Guard. And I had a detachment of my Marines of about 80 that I was responsible for. And after my 4-year enlistment was up, at that time you had 2 years inactive reserve you had to do. So I said, well, I'm not doing 2 years inactive, I'll just re-enlist. So I re-enlisted, got my bonus, which at that time was minimal. I think it was $1,200. And I stayed the additional 2 years. And when that was up, I wanted to go for 20. So I was going to enlist for another 4. And they told me I was going to be deployed. Vietnam was still raging, and with my MOS, I said, let me guess where I'm going. They said, yeah, Vietnam. I said, I'm not rolling the dice again. So I got out, and I've missed it ever since. That's why I have this on. That's why I have this on. That's why you have that shirt on. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yep. What did you do after you got out?
I took a meat cutting apprenticeship under the GI Bill. And I became a very skilled meat cutter, and then became a meat manager. And I did that for 43 years till I retired.
You're involved in the VFW now. Did you start that right after you got out, or was that something you picked up later?
I've always belonged to the VFW and the American Legion, but about after I retired, I started thinking, true veterans never quit giving to their country and their community. So I started doing blood drives through the American Legion, blood drives here at the VFW. I started doing the blood drives. I've collected over 1,000 pints of blood and saved probably 3,000 lives. And then I started doing sub sales here at the VFW, sub sales at the American Legion to help fund them and to give them additional money to function on so they can do for other people and the community and those people that are in need. And I just felt a desire to keep going and keep doing it. I love my country. I love the people of this country. And I love organizations like the VFW and the American Legion because we do good things for the community.
You've also been involved in finding the family of the recipient of a Purple Heart. Do you want to discuss that story?
A guy's father found a Purple Heart when he bought out a storage shed that was abandoned. And he took it to the commander of the American Legion, and he said, "You think you can help me find the family and the recipient of this Purple Heart?" And the commander said, "Well, the guy you want to see is that guy over there." And he pointed to me. He said, "He's got 2 Purple Hearts. And if anybody will find this guy, he will." So he brought it over to me and he showed it to me and told me the background of it. And I looked at him and I said, "Let me tell you something, young man." I said, "I'm a Marine. I'm a combat decorated Marine. I have 2 Purple Hearts. And I will definitely find this family or this man. I won't make it a project. I will make this a mission. And Marines never stop until their mission's completed." So I started this, and I had about 9 months to a year into it, and Georgia Ann McGuire showed up at one of my blood drives here at the VFW, and her and I got to talking, and she asked me, beside blood drives, what was any of my other projects, and I explained to her about finding this family or the guy. And she says, "Do you mind if I get on board with you?" And I said, "No." I said, "I would greatly appreciate that." Well, she wound up being an angel sent from heaven, because together, her and I found this family. And the Purple Heart recipient died in Korea at the age of 20 at Hamburger Hill. And his family, he was originally from Poland, Ohio. And after months and months of research and phone calls, George Ann and I found this family. And we had a big celebration here at the Post. And we fed everybody in attendance. And we presented the Purple Heart back to the family. And we had all 4 news channels here covering it. She was on television, I was on television. And I was in my dress blues because I can still fit in them. I was going to wear them tonight, but I had some other engagements prior to this, and I just couldn't find time to go home and put them on.
And you're working on another one now, right?
Pardon me?
You're working on another Purple Heart recipient?
There's one I'm working on right now. He's from Thompsontown. And apparently he was in Germany in the Eastern Theater. But then his brother apparently was in the Pacific Theater. And apparently they were both pilots, because I have the Purple Heart from the one brother who was in the Berlin Airlift, because he has a ribbon in there for that. And then there's also a ribbon in there for the Pacific Theater from the other brother. So I've got to get in touch with, they were both in the Army Air Corps, so I got to get in touch with people that can provide me with the medals and the ribbons, because I'm going to purchase them. And once we find this family, we're going to get the medals back to them, and we're going to have another ceremony here at the post.
That's great. That's a great thing to be doing. So you were obviously in a leadership position in the Marine Corps as a sergeant. What did the things that you've learned in the Marines, how did that translate to the rest of your life as far as what you learned about leadership and how you use that?
Well, it taught me tremendous responsibility, but it also taught me that you don't lead by demanding, you lead by example. You set the example, they will follow. You can't lead by dictating. Not only that, that taught me that you'll get more respect from the people you're working with and from your Marines if you show them respect and show them that you're not asking them to do anything you won't do.
Do you have any advice for the younger generation today?
Do I have any advice for them? I don't know if you want to hear this.
This is some of the best stuff we get. Ask a 100-year-old World War II veteran that question, and you'll hear an answer.
I would say to this younger generation, same thing my drill instructor said to me in Parris Island. And be a man. Quit being a wimp. This younger generation is pathetic. And so is our leadership within our government.
Are there any other experiences that you'd like to talk about?
Just if the United States politicians would have kept their nose out of Vietnam, we could have won that war anytime we wanted. We could have won that war. When Nixon took office and started the bombing on Hanoi and the Ho Chi Minh Trail and blocked Haiphong Harbor, wouldn't let any Russian or Chinese ships in or out. We were extremely winning that war. If the government would have stayed out of Vietnam, we could have won that war anytime we wanted. And the other thing the United States government and these politicians can't understand is there is no such thing as a humanitarian war. People die. Civilians die. And the more of a humanitarian war you try to fight, the more of your own troops you're going to sacrifice.
So another subject that's really hard for a lot of veterans is watching what happened in Afghanistan.
After what?
In Afghanistan. Do you have any thoughts on what happened, the way we ended up there?
And left a handful of Marines there to guard that airport. And 13 of them died.
Yeah, we left our...
Our government, when we get involved in a war, we got to understand we got involved in that war to defeat the enemy, not to play games with them and come to a stalemate. And again, I'll repeat, you can't fight a humanitarian war. People are going to die. Civilians are going to die. You can't fight a humanitarian war and be victorious. They were 13 Marines who lost their lives due to political ignorance. There was no reason for them to die.
Yeah.
There's no reason to let a small force like that in a country where you know they don't care who they kill. We deserted a country that we promised to help. In Afghanistan, in Vietnam. My son was in the Marine Corps for 10 years. He was in Kuwait, Persian Gulf. The same thing there. We made a half-ass commitment. And we went in there and we didn't finish the job we promised them we would do. Same way with Vietnam.
Yep.
People say to me, thank you for your service. And they say the same thing to my son, thank you for your service. We both say, it was my honor, my pleasure, my privilege, and I'd do it all again tomorrow if I could. I didn't enjoy 14 months of combat every day, seeing death every day, but it was my job. And I did my job. And I saved lives. But I left when I felt we weren't finishing our mission in Vietnam. And I felt like I was deserting my Marines. Semper Fi, hoorah, devil dogs. God bless the USA. And I still live by the Marine Corps motto, for God, country, and Corps.
That's a great
Once a Marine, always a Marine. And I will sport my stuff every day of the week for the rest of my life.